Welcome to Spiritual Truths with your host Kerry-Marie. Today I'm very excited to have with me Dr. Susan Barnes from Lilydale in the States. Susan will be discussing Lilydale with you, the community and what's it all about. Along with that, she's extremely passionate about physical mediumship, so she'll go into more detail to give an explanation on physical mediumship. So with my pleasure, here we have Susan Barnes. Welcome, Susan. It's so great to see you again after all this time. It's been quite a while since I've seen you. How long would it have been since I've last seen you?
I don't know. I mean, the last time I saw you face to face, you were in Lilydale.
That's right. I think it might have been around 2017.
Was it that long
Or,
ago?
2018. Because I
Wow.
was doing Route 66 with my husband, and Sensi Murder had just come out. That's why I remember the date. So it's been like 6 years
Yes.
ago.
Yeah, that would be about right. Yeah.
Yeah, so Susan is Dr. Susan Barnes, and I met Susan through the SNUI, which I've spoken about already with Monique Vanderbilt, and we later met in England. And then you invited me to stay with you at Lilydale where I taught. So, Susan, can you just tell us where Lilydale is located for the listeners?
Lilydale is about an hour south of Buffalo, New York. It's way in western New York, like 400 miles from New York City.
Wow.
So it's yeah, on the total opposite side of the state. It's it's not quite gated, but it is kind of a gated little community. It's technically it's on an island, so the houses are all like together, so you don't have neighborhoods butting up against each other. So when you come in the gates, you are in Lilydale and you're in that whole community and environment. There's about, what did I say, 350 homes here.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And can you
Um,
tell me a little bit about Lilydale, so listeners understand what Lilydale actually is?
Lilydale is the largest spiritualist community in the world, I believe.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I don't know of any other one that's as large. There are other spiritual communities, but they're not, I mean, there's one down in Florida, but it's not nearly what Lilydale is. In fact, the one in Florida, Casadega, that a lot of people go to, was started by Lilydale people. And it's called Casadega because Lilydale is on Lake Casadega.
Right.
So it's on a lake. It is definitely a summer place during the winter. There's a tremendous amount of snow. In fact, we're getting snow again today. And it's got a lot of Victorian houses. It is a historical site in New York State. It's been here since the 1800s. Uh, to live here, you have to be a spiritualist, which means you have to be a member of a spiritualist church. And you also have to become a member of the assembly to buy a house here.
Wow.
Not all of the people here are mediums. People mistake that, but a lot of them are.
So people can come visit Lilydale, can't they? So,
Yes, and there are a group of people which are called registered mediums, and the registered mediums are allowed to have businesses in Lilydale so people can come and get readings with them.
so general public can come on. I think you said to me like on a Saturday, people come and have readings with the mediums and that sort of thing. Is that
Yes.
correct? I remember that.
Yeah.
And you invited me to teach there as well, and I loved it. And the feedback I got, they loved my New Zealand accent. For some reason, the American people love the New Zealand accent. One of the things I want to talk to the listeners about and was about the fairies. Now, I always had a fascination with fairies or elementals, but you always wonder if it's real. And the first evening with you, but my husband came as well, I got taken to this forest and it was completely dark and we saw these fairies at bright lights. And my logical mind thought, well, that could be fireflies. But then I thought about it and I thought I had to sing. Like we had to invite the fairies to come out. And then
Right.
they actually, when we stopped singing, we went back. So you can just talk a little bit about the fairies, because that's like really quite fascinating.
Well, we do. It's interesting. We have a fairy trail here,
Mm,
which is kind of the touristy one where people go and put little houses and butterflies and all kinds of fun things in the woods, and you can walk all around it. And then there's the old fairy trail. Now it's the old fairy trail where the fairies show up.
yes.
So people in the know about it do regular evenings where they go down to the old fairy trail and find the fairies. And you can tell they're not fireflies because they don't fly like fireflies. And they're bigger too. They have kind of larger illumination than the fireflies. So it's a regular trip. I've taken a lot of people to the fairy trail. A lot of people who never believed in fairies before, and they come back amazed. And we've captured photographs of them.
Oh, have you got photographs of them? Oh,
I don't have them, but I have friends who took photographs of them. Yeah.
how fascinating. I think it's just sort of, I totally believed in fairies after that. I just wondered, and then not saying I'm a non-believer, but it's good. I had to see it to believe it. And I understood that's where fairy lights come from. So moving on from the fairies, so can you tell me a little bit about you? Because you're Dr. Susan Barnes, a little bit about you, Susan, and your mediumship.
Okay, I am a communication professor. I have a PhD in communication. And for my academic career, I was studying visual communication and internet communication. And then when I got more into retirement, I started doing research into spiritual communication. So I wrote my book,
Oh, your book. What's your book called?
Unfolding Physical Mediumship. And that's me on the cover in trance. And you can't see from there, but there's on the side of my face, there's a little face, so you can see that I was actually going into transfiguration in
Interesting.
the
So,
photo.
I understand physical mediumship, but the listeners, not some of them will understand it. But can you explain physical mediumship? Because it's quite a different phenomena and people may not understand it. So you can give a simple explanation of physical mediumship?
Yes, as we know, there's basically two types of mediumship. There's mental mediumship and there's physical mediumship. Trance mediumship actually falls under the category of mental mediumship, but it's similar to physical mediumship because the medium goes into a total state of trance. And while in that state of trance, the medium tries to create this substance. Usually it's ectoplasma, although some are working with energy now. They create this substance called ectoplasma, and the ectoplasma actually helps them move things around in the room. So there's physical movement that happens. Sometimes the ectoplasma, in the most extreme form of physical mediumship, the ectoplasma gets into a pool into the center of the room and it rises up and it shows you a figure of a deceased loved one.
So, and so with physical mediumship, what you're saying, with to my understanding, mental mediumship is subjective to the medium's mind, but with physical mediumship,
Correct.
it's objective and everybody can experience it. And do they talk as well? They manifest.
Yes. Yes. There's so many different degrees of it. I mean, there are people that do direct voice. Leslie Flint was the most famous one who did that, and he would
What's
bring
direct voice? What is it?
through the voices of the deceased people
Through his own
in the
voice or how?
they create a voice box. So they either create a voice box next to the vocal cords of the medium, or they create a voice box inside a trumpet
Oh,
so that speech comes out of a trumpet. So it works a couple different ways.
see, once again, you have to see it to believe it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. You'll say that people are not telling you the truth, but when you hear a loved one's voice from the other side, you believe. I mean, there's no way to explain that feeling
It's so
at all.
healing. Would you say it's very healing?
It can be very, very healing. Yes. Gary Mannion, who is a physical medium, he will create ectoplasmic hands so that the hands come out of the cabinet like this. And then the person goes up and shakes the hand of the loved one. And you can feel the love and the energy and sense who that person is
Oh,
when
you
you touch
can't,
the hand.
that's something you can't explain. So you mentioned the cabinet. So for the listeners, they probably won't understand what the cabinet is. If you can explain what a cabinet is.
The cabinet goes back a long way. It goes back, I think, to almost to the Davenport brothers. And the idea of the cabinet was that it was a enclosed space, and it would allow the spirit energy to become more intense and build, so that it could build. And so, especially the ectoplasm, because the ectoplasm is a substance, and it comes out of the pores, all the different openings in the body, and it is a mixture of spirit energy and the biological system of the medium. So the medium actually will lose weight and will, as this ectoplasm extrudes from their body,
They
and they
lose
can be,
weight.
yeah, and they can be injured if someone turns on a bright light or makes a sudden move, then it snaps back into their body and they can be injured or burned.
They can burn. Wow. So it's going to be really, you've got to know what you're doing. You can't fool around with
Exactly.
the thing. It's just really, and that's
Exactly.
why it'd be good to read your book. You mentioned something with the physical mediumship, that it's usually ectoplasm, but you said there's something else that's coming about now as well.
Yes, they're also using energy. There are mediums that just work with energy and don't create the ectoplasm. And they have some pretty, I've seen them, they've have some pretty phenomenal things that they do. I mean, they they manifest hands, physical hands
Mm.
you can shake. They can get the tension pulling and things with the curtains, so you get that. One medium actually created automatic writing on a piece of paper, and it was in the handwriting of the deceased individual, who was recognized by his wife.
How amazing. That's fascinating. I remember the hands myself. I did a healing on someone and their body disappeared and they turned into red and green. And these hands, they weren't large hands, they were sort of quite, they weren't, they're sort of middle-sized hands, they weren't large or small. And they went into the body and I saw them going into the body. It was incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the hands are all different sizes. I mean,
Yes.
somehow the way you can know, some people will say that there are a lot of skeptics, of
Mm.
course, and the skeptics will say, oh, it's the hand of the medium. Well, when the hand coming out is much smaller or more delicate or much larger than the mediums, then you know it's not the medium's hand.
So what does
You
it
know,
look like? Does it look like a normal hand or what does it look like?
um, the one I saw done with energy looked like a hand. It was slightly deformed, so I knew it wasn't the medium's hand. There was a slight deformity on it, but it looked like a regular hand. And it
Wow.
squeezed your hand and shook your hand just like that. In the dark seances, I've had hands that I mean, I haven't seen them visually, but I've had hands come up, and you're not supposed to grab back, but I've
Mm.
had hands come and grabbing. It kept coming and coming and coming until I shook it hand back, and then it went away. But yeah, I mean, they come and they touch you. I've had in dark seances, I've had them take my chair. They took my chair and they put it on the tip and they pushed me into the middle of the room and spun me all around and tipped me back almost till I fell over.
So
And
huge energy, massive energy.
oh, oh yeah, amazing amounts of energy. The hands that
Mm.
Gary gets are kind of what is it called? Fluorescent. It's a white kind of white fluorescence. You can see the image. You can see the image of the hand, and it's covered with ectoplasm, so it's kind of slimy.
Slimy, wow. Um, Something different again. What about have you experienced Apports? Because I remember when I was at the Arthur Finney College, I talked about Apports.
This is an Apport.
Really? Can you tell us a little bit? But that's fascinating. Can you tell us about that,
Um,
please?
this is an Apport that was outported by a medium named Bill Bolt. He is relatively new. He's an American. He lives about 2 hours from us in Dale in Rochester, New York. And he's outported these big stones, and he was funny. He also is very, very psychic, because I was at one seance with him, and he was handing out stones, and I wanted this big stone so I could make a necklace. And of course, I didn't say this, was all in my mind, and I didn't get it. So then the next time I was working with him and he did the Apports, this came out, and it was the biggest one in the bunch. And he said, "Here, you take it, because I know you wanted to make a necklace out of it." And I
Okay,
was like,
so
"Oh," you know.
incredible. So with the apports, for the listener, they won't understand what apports are. So if you can explain what an apport is.
There's Outports and Assports.
Okay.
Outports are when something materializes,
Mm-hmm.
and it also can be a living thing. They've had the, the skull experiments actually, I believe, had birds outport into the room.
Just they
Um,
disappear into the room and
yeah,
material things appear.
they just appear. Yeah, somebody once had almost something look like a lion appear. But it's like, I mean, they were someplace before on the earth. It's not that they weren't anywhere. They were somewhere, and they're just being brought into the seance room. But I've had things happen where jewelry's come out. I mean, they Michael Shane and Bill Bolt, they've had rosary come out of their mouths. They use their mouths, so what happens is their mouth becomes like a vortex, and
Interesting.
these objects materialize inside their mouth, and then they come out, but they're not like wet and slimy, so they haven't like swallowed them and then, you know, regurgitated them up. They're dry, pretty much dry when they come out. So, but all of these things come out, and I mean, they're huge, and some of them are sharp too. And we've had things come out that were very much for specific people, with like pins and symbols and stuff that has specific meanings for the individuals that receive them.
And so you still have the apport now. So it's a physical thing that's produced and you're still wearing it around your neck.
I do. You can't give them away. You have to keep them. It's and I have a big green one. This one I use for mediumship. The other one I use for healing because it's green. It's a peridot. And I mean, it's huge. I mean, it would be worth several thousands of dollars. And the other outports, this is a good outport story. Michael Shane also creates lots of outports, and he at the end he's got this big pool of outports, and he gives them out to people individually. And I was working the door, so he said, "Come up and get one." So he came up and gave me this beautiful little aquamarine stone. And then a friend of mine went up to get his, and Michael said, "Okay, this is for you, and this is for a friend." So, you know, he came back to my house. I said, "I have plenty of Apports. You don't have to give me your Apport." And I said, "But let me see it." Turned out that the Apport my friend was given was identical match to the Apport that I was given. And they were
Incredible.
about this big. So I had earrings made out of them.
Wonderful.
You know,
So
yeah.
interesting. So you're talking about these upports come out of the mouth, but also like, so a lion wouldn't come out of a mouth or a bird wouldn't. How does a living creatures
Well,
or,
it doesn't, it's not always the mouth. It
okay,
also comes out of the ceiling.
okay.
Okay, you want a great Apport? Here's a great Apport story. It's with Gary Mannion. Gary Mannion had a couple of people that he would always do a lot of seances with from Pennsylvania. The guy's name was Bubba. Well, Bubba was traveling in the area, in the Pennsylvania, Ohio area, and he lost his wallet. And so in a seance at his house, he asked Gary, "Well, where's my wallet?" And, nothing really happened. But then in the next seance in New York, Gary in trance goes to Bubba. "Bubba, did you lose your wallet?" And Bubba says, "Yeah, I lost my wallet." And so then the spirit says, "Well, wait a minute." And you heard this real crackling kind of sound. And then boom, all this stuff fell out of the ceiling. And it
Wow.
was all his credit cards and money and everything that had been inside the wallet. And they turned the light on. This guy go, Bubba, take a look. So he looks, he goes, yeah, here's all my credit cards. Here's everything here. And he goes, but there's no wallet. And so the spirit goes, oh, well, wait a minute. Crackle, crackle, crackle. And then boom, the wallet comes out on the ground. So then they said, turn on the red light bulb, go look at your wallet. He goes, yeah, it's my wallet. And then, of course, people ask, well, why didn't the wallet come immediately with the other things? And the spirit explained that the wallet had been found. Someone had taken it, but they had taken all the stuff out of the wallet, and so that the wallet and its contents were separate. So that it took spirit a while to find the wallet and all the things that had been inside of it.
That's so
And then,
incredible.
I know. And then we asked, which is interesting, what are the people going to think when they can't find the stuff they stole? And I mean, that's a thought. I stole this wallet, I stole this credit card, now I can't find it. And so, yeah, so they said, well, they just aren't going to be able to find it. They'll think they lost it or misplaced it.
Interesting. So you talked about the light on, and then you went and said the red light. So can you explain why I wouldn't put a normal light on, why they used a red light, not a normal light?
Because the normal light will make the ectoplasm, affect the ectoplasm, and it could go back into the medium.
Too fast.
So too fast. So what happens is a lot of this stuff is done in the dark, although some mediums like Gary are starting to work more in the light, but it's done in the dark because the ectoplasm for most, not all, but most physical mediums works best in the dark. And so there's a red light in the room. So the medium will tell you when you can turn the red light on.
Interesting. So I'm just going to ask you now, because you mentioned to me you do lots of different mediumship. You're a really interesting lady, and your book, people can find out more about physical mediumship. But you mentioned to me about Educ Casey or Educ Casey Clinic and his teachings. When I went to Arthur Finney College, Eileen Davies told me that I had to read Educ Casey's books, which I confess I haven't done yet. But can you explain a little bit about the Educ Casey teachings and the Educ Casey, I think it's a clinic or something you mentioned to me?
Okay. Educ Casey is the most documented psychic of all time. And we say that because there are all of his readings were recorded. So there's thousands and thousands of readings. And he died, in the 1930s? Yeah. And his work he was a great medical intuitive. When people were ill, he would give them these kind of herbal remedies and home remedies to cure their illnesses and diet and things like that. And so people have studied his work, doctors have studied it, and of course, lots of mediums. And people study the things he wrote because it was written in kind of an archaic English. It's not real clear English. So it's kind of like a Bible-y English. And so understanding it takes a lot of study. And people have their study groups that study the Casey works, different aspects of it. And they have a group called the Glad Helpers, which do healing. It's similar to the Healing Temple in Lilydale, where they do hands-on healing. They do hands-on healing, and they do healing prayers and healing lists for people all around the world. And I'm trying to think they have lectures and all kinds of events at the Physical Casey Center, which is in Virginia Beach. And Casey predicted that with all of the earth changes that were going to go on, Virginia Beach was probably the safest place to be. So they built his center there in Virginia Beach. And when I decided to find a winter place, because I wanted to get out of the snow here in Lilydale during the winter, Virginia Beach was a kind of natural place for me because of the Casey Center and because I knew there would be other people like Lilydale people, open-minded people there.
Interesting.
And there would be a built-in community there. So I gravitated to Virginia Beach and have gradually over the past 3 years gotten involved with the Casey Center.
So people can actually attend themselves. People can actually learn through the Educ Casey clinics and attend these courses themselves. Is that right?
Yeah, I just for the Lilydale, I just taught a course called Casey Inspired Psychic Development, which I'm going to try to offer next summer as a summer workshop in the Dale. And that went over very, very well. I mean, we had over 30 people in the class. So there was great interest in it. And the difference, here's the difference. The difference between the Casey work and the work we did with the SNU
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that all of the SNU work is very much to prove the continuity of life.
Yes.
So all of that work is about trying to bring through deceased
Mm-hmm.
relatives or deceased people to prove that. In contrast, the Casey work is about developing your own spiritual development and your own psychic abilities to be able to communicate with the God source.
I see.
And it's very much involved with service. And so service is a very large part of the work. And it's much more self-reflective, and you have to have more of the idea. Instead of going up and saying, guys, give me the information, you have to look within yourself and say, get my soul. It's more soul to soul type of a reading.
Yeah, I understand that.
Reading, yeah, than reaching a deceased person. So Casey never called himself a medium, although he was accessing the Akashic records and actually going up higher, I think, a higher level than like above deceased
Oh,
individual.
I do. I really understand what you're talking about there. There's a different level.
Yeah,
I felt that myself. I did that, like, yeah, when you get up at a higher realm, a higher level, it feels much, much higher. And then I've done that myself. And then I've come down, the spirits walked through, even though spirit's higher than us in vibration, I
right.
come from there down to that. I could feel the energy shift. So I
Yes.
absolutely know what you're talking about. I've experienced that myself as well.
Yeah, so he wants to go up to that
Hmm.
higher level and able people to get direct messages from the God source. But I mean, we use that energy level in healing when we
Mm.
do the the healing part of it. So the healing aspect of the SNU and the healing aspect of the Casey work are very much the same.
Very similar. So I'm just going to move on to now psychic art because you're also a psychic artist. Can you tell us a bit about your psychic art? Because that sounds fascinating.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I was trained as an artist, so when I first encountered it, it was through it wasn't through the SNU, but it was through the um, International Spiritualist Federation, ISF, and I went to their convention in England, and they had spirit art classes. So I said, "Oh, I'm an artist. Let me take a spirit art class." So in the class, we were taught how to do portraits of deceased individuals. So I can do those. I don't do it for individuals. I do it publicly. I demonstrate the spirit portraits. Um, so we did that. And then from that, I started branching out and I started doing more automatic kinds of art and art that you create, that you have to do it using your subconscious, the right side of your brain, so that the subconscious ideas come out and you can get messages from it. So when you look at the art, we can find messages, inspiring messages for individuals.
Oh, I really understand that. I really understand that through the art. I can, yeah.
Right.
I mean, people have tarot cards, and sometimes people can see pictures in there from spirit. I believe that spirit directing you. But I remember my friend threw these shells in front of me from the beach, and I read the shells, and it was just the creative energy that was helping me read the shells. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Same sort of thing. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, you can read almost anything. A friend of mine reads stones, and I was laughing because I did it at the college one time. I was in a course. And so they said, go out and find something in nature and bring it back. People found leaves, they found stones,
Mm,
they found all kinds of
mm.
different things. They brought it back and did a reading for the person using it.
Yeah, I've done that before. That's a great way to
It's
teach people.
great fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say is your spiritual truths? You've obviously got quite a few, but this is called spiritual truths. And what I'm doing is getting people to sort of give their ideas what their spiritual truth is to try and help people find their own spiritual truths.
Exactly. That's what the Casey work's all about.
Is it?
Yeah, finding your own spiritual truth.
So
Absolutely.
have you started to find your own?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you the book. Um, okay. It's called Educ Casey's 12 Steps to Spiritual Attunement, spiritual something. Casey came up with like 12 steps to help people really develop their inner spirituality. And the first one was one of the early ones is finding your spiritual ideal. I mean, what is the ideal? What is it that you want to do? It's
Mm.
opening yourself up to the spirit world. It's having faith. It's having patience. So there's a whole bunch of different things to try to exercises for people to think about to get themselves centered more spiritually.
That's interesting because I know that quite a thing about mediumship, it's not just about passing messages, it's about your own personal journey and finding yourself within. I think also this world is quite tough. It's quite a hard world. It's not easy. So it's quite a good guide, really, to find your own way to move forward spiritually. Because it's all unique and different.
Yeah, and everybody's mediumship is different. So, yeah, I mean, we have to be aware of that. So we can find all kinds of different ways to bring through uplifting messages.
Yeah. And people can find, the listener can find their own spiritual truth, can't they? Everybody will find their own spiritual truth at different ways.
That's right. That's right. No two people are going to do it exactly the same way.
No, which is really, really interesting. So when people want, so people can come to Lilydale, they can see you for workshops, they can do training through you, through other various mediums, and Lilydale advertises this, don't they?
Yes, the Lilydale season runs from the end of June to the 1st of September. This year, I did it last year. I did a pre-season conference on physical mediumship, which was a great success. This year, I'm doing another pre-season conference called Metaphysical Medley, where the first day we're going to be doing psychic things, the second day mediumship, the third day trance, and the final day physical. So
So
I do
I want to be
experiments.
there.
I do experiments with a physical mediumship as well. I'm trying to develop a new course in physical mediumship that's based on historical kinds of mediums. For example, uh, the medium that was a slate writer, Pola Keeler, was the slate writer, wrote a book on how to do slate writing. So I've been teaching people his method of slate writing, and we did have a good experiment happen. We started to get some precipitation on the slates, which was really, really interesting. Of course, I have to find some other people. Cora Richmond is my person now for trance. She was an incredible trance medium.
So you're talking about precipitation, you're talking about precipitated art, aren't you?
Yes. Mhm.
People won't understand what that is.
Well, precipitated art is probably um, the most sophisticated form of spirit art because it's, again, created with ectoplasma. Hands don't touch the image. The image, mediums stand on both sides of a canvas. The image starts to appear on the canvas like a Polaroid picture. It gradually gets darker and darker, darker. And the last thing that usually happens in the image is that the eyes are closed until the end, the eyes open.
Mm.
And the picture is done. But even after the picture is given to the individual, it can change,
Yeah, I heard that because it's
because
that
people
girl,
have
wasn't
had,
there? Is that girl
we've
with the
seen,
flower appealed? The flower appeared? I remember.
yeah, the flower appeared, and there's one where I think the flower disappeared in another one. Um, but they do change over time, and they look just as crisp and beautiful today as they did the day they were created. The look of most of this precipitated work looks like a pastel kind of a pastel drawing, which would come from the 1800s, from the time that was kind of the look of what the artists were doing. And most of them are portraits, not all, but most of the pictures are portraits of people, of deceased relatives that people can recognize and do know who they are. The famous mediums that did that were the Bang sisters. They worked out of Chicago and Lilydale, and the Campbell brothers, who worked out of Lilydale. They say that the atmosphere of the Great Lakes in this area is very good for precipitating art and developing mediumship. So that's why this area has kind of been a main area for mediumship. And a lot of the mediums, the Davenport brothers, came from here. A lot of the big mediums came from this area.
Interesting. You know, when I stayed with you, I had quite a vivid dream, and I kept on. I dreamt of the Native American Indian, and I saw them on horses, and I had it very strongly when I was staying in your house. Is there Native American Indians at all that used to live there? Because I had huge dreams about it, and I thought, what am I dreaming about Native American Indians? And I thought, of course, I'm in the States.
Yes, no. This island that is now Lilydale used to be like ceremonial grounds for Native Americans. It was an island that many different animals lived on, and it was a big spot for the Native Americans. Yes,
That's
and of course
interesting.
we have Native Americans. We have a reservation not too far from us.
Oh, interesting. That's fantastic. Like you're a ton of knowledge. You really are. So I could talk to you all day, and I'm sure the listeners are going to really enjoy your information you got. So how can they get hold of you, Susan?
The best way to do that is, and my email and my website are similar. My email is spiritartgallery@gmail.com, and my website is spiritartgallery.net.
Fantastic. So they can get hold of you. And can
Yeah,
you
so
do online readings like Zoom
oh
rooms?
yeah,
How do you
of
do that?
course, I have a Zoom room. I also teach. I don't no longer teach for the SNUI. I teach for I don't know if you know them, Victor and Wendy Zamit. They're out of Australia. Um,
I don't know them. Yes.
they have Victor and Wendy have been studying this stuff for years and years and years, and they've been big promoters of physical mediumship and mediumship in general in the afterlife. And they have an Afterlife Group, and they have a weekly newsletter, the weekly report that they send out, that people, I mean, they've got thousands of people subscribe to it. And through their group, they run every Sunday, they do a global gathering where they have someone who does a lecture. I'll be doing one in a couple of weeks on Casey. And they record them all. So if you go to their website, you can find all of the lectures from 5 years
What is the
recorded there.
website? What is the website called?
It's Victor Zamit, VictorZammit.com/Zoom, and you
Fantastic.
will get to their all of this stuff. In addition to the lectures, they also run free groups. I teach a spirit art group twice a month, and I teach a mediumship group twice a month. And so you can find out all the information by going to their website. And
That's
there's all
fantastic.
kinds of other groups as well. I mean, and lectures and people talking and stuff. So it's a wonderful resource,
I was going to say that
especially for people who live in areas where there's not a lot.
because people always are looking for those resources, and it's good you can point them in the right direction. So I'm going to thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. And I'd like to catch up again, have a chat sometime. I'd love to come and visit Lilydale again as well. And I just think you're amazing. I'd like to buy your book as well, actually.
Um, well, thank you. Yes, and I have some copies of your book here that I've been showing people as well.
Oh, thank
And
you.
Yeah, yeah, let me know. I mean, they do the schedule a year in advance, but, um, I usually have know when it's happening and can help you put a course in.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to. I'd love to, Mike. See you again. Well, thank you so much
Oh,
for your
yeah.
time, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much. It was great seeing you. Take care.
You too. I truly enjoyed this podcast with Susan. Susan discussed Lilydale and that it's the largest spiritual community in the world. I also had the privilege, we talked about my time there and how I taught in a spiritual community. My visit with the fairies, and she explained the fairies in a bit more detail, that people are taking photos of fairies. Susan also went into her detail about physical mediumship and the book that she wrote about it. This was indeed fascinating and a very intriguing subject. Susan's spiritual truth she's found is through Educ Casey and his teachings, and how she likes to teach the Educ Casey philosophy. To help this podcast, please go to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Blessings and love, Kerry-Marie.